Joining us now, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. You've been through a lot over the years, Howard. Very seasoned, obviously. But today's move, is it unexpected for you? About right? I mean, you saw Monday was kind of like a bonus, the way it turned around, and but when it finally did happen, and we got the numbers, was this reaction? Is it overdone, you think, or about what you thought?
Well, I think the long term or even the medium term, you've got to expect the United States of American markets are going to do extremely, extremely well. I understand the reordering of the rest of the world's markets, but they have been taking advantage of the trading policy, the markets policy. All the policies of the United States of America were designed to make you rich and make us poor. You know, take our factories from us, go build elsewhere. I mean, imagine this. Why are all of our pharmaceutical products, the ingredients to our pharmaceutical products, made in Asia? That's not cheap labor. That's just a failed policy that lets the rest of the world gut America. And that's what Donald Trump is here to address, and he's going to change it, and he's going to protect America for our children and our grandchildren.
Hey, Mr. Secretary, who came up with the equation that we've shown? I know it's hard to get a clean number for tariffs plus all the other things that you would constitute as unfair trade, whether it's currency manipulation or regulations or whatever. But there is some, I don't know if I'd call it confusion, but there's some downright derision about using a trade deficit imbalance and then subtracting it and, you know, putting it over another and coming up with some of these what look like almost arbitrary numbers taken. There it is. Did you come up with that? I don't know if you had advanced calculus or something.
All right, the council, stop. The Council of Economic Advisors, right, coupled with the United States Trade Representative, they have huge staffs of economists who study this and have been studying this for years. They put out the non-tariff trade barriers. I'll give you an example. Yesterday, I was talking to a trade minister of a big country, and I said, look, we can't sell cars in your market. You've got to do something to change that. It's obviously unfair. And at the very end of the conversation, the trade minister dropped his head and said these words. He said, fine, we will provide your car manufacturers the same subsidy we provide ours. Just think about that for a minute. So you've got all these countries, they charge a VAT or a consumption tax. What do they do with that tax? If they turn around and sell really cheap energy to their steel company, then their steel companies destroy ours, put ours out of business, and then all of the steel goes elsewhere, and we can't defend ourselves in a war. If they take that and give it back as a subsidy to their car manufacturer, then their car manufacturer actually has a cost of $40,000 when our car manufacturer has $50,000, and of course we're never going to sell a car. So this is the reordering of fair trade. And what happens is people think it's all about tariffs. It's about those non-tariff trade barriers.
Well, it'd be nice
That's what we are addressing now.
It'd be nice if everybody on that list, all those countries, said, you know what? We've seen the error in our ways, and we're going to go 0-0. We want to make it fair across the board, but how likely is that? How soon do you expect to see some concessions, or conversely, retaliatory tariffs, which just cause this to go much longer than anyone probably wants, to be more costly and could be a full-scale trade war if it goes that way? Which are you expecting?
I expect most countries to start to really examine their trade policy towards the United States of America and stop picking on us. Stop saying that we can't sell our corn to India. Stop saying that we can't sell our beef anywhere. Just stop treating us so poorly if we are the great consumer of the earth. The United States buys everybody's products. We buy everybody's goods. You just have to treat us fairly, and that is the problem. So some countries, which have these VATs, and they use these VAT taxes to, they basically subsidize their domestic production, right? That's got to really be balanced. We've got to figure that out together. But what you're going to see is you're going to see tariff rates decline. You're going to see the opening of all of these global markets to our agriculture, to our ranchers, to our fishermen. You're going to see American production start to rise and finally be fair. And I think that we have Stockholm Syndrome. We're so used to being abused. And Donald Trump's been talking about this for 35 years.
Mr. Secretary, in terms of the suggestion that we're being abused or being fair, what would you say to the United Kingdom, or what would you say to Australia, where we have a trade surplus, where they could look at us and say, we're the winners of that competition, and yet we are going to tariff them? Well,
look, they each have the lowest rate available, right? I mean, if you really dissect these the trade numbers that are made publicly, I mean, the United Kingdom, part of their trade surplus is that they have the London Metals Exchange, and they count the importing of bullion. I mean, come on. So, I mean, if you really dissect these things, you realize they have a 20% VAT, okay, and these things, but they work hard.
So we don't have a trade surplus with them. They're raping us too.
Well, they have a, if you looked at them and really studied it, you'd see they have a goods deficit with us, right? And Australia buys a lot of our planes, which we really appreciate. But we're really looking at the production for people to get jobs. So the stuff with Mexico and Canada, I'd really like to talk about, because USMCA is still in place. So if you make a car in America and the parts are made in Canada or Mexico, there is no tariff. The auto parts business of Canada and Mexico are not being touched. Energy prices are not being touched. You know, people need to understand we did not today, semiconductors are not included. Pharmaceuticals are not included. Donald Trump's going to deeply study those, and those are going to come later on how to reshore from Taiwan, all that semiconductor manufacturing. We have to protect ourselves at some point, right? America has to be able to protect itself. We can't have everything. I mean, think about it. All of our electronics are primarily built in Taiwan. It used to be built here. Our policies let Taiwan take it all. And now, 9,000 miles away, our way of life is being built. And Donald Trump is saying, come on, that's got to be here. That's why you've got Apple announcing it's going to do $500 billion in production here. I mean, think about it. We all hold our iPhones, which we love. Why do they have to be made in Taiwan and China? Why can't those be made with robotics in America? And you know what Donald Trump has said? They're going to be made in America.
Secretary Lutnick, there have been questions raised already about whether a company like Apple would be able to get a carve-out from this because they have promised to build more in the United States. The market's trying to figure out how permanent these tariffs are going to be if there is a negotiation taking place. Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, said yesterday that we may have to let these sit for a while, but I'd also heard that you'd been in charge of already negotiating with some countries, maybe giving them wish lists to say, here's what it would take to get these tariffs reduced or removed. Is that the case? And if so, which countries are you negotiating with?
We're talking with all of the major countries of the world, and we've been talking to them for more than a month. This has been coming. We've said it's been coming. The key is, will they take our agricultural products? Will they treat us fairly? Can they treat us fairly? And the answer is, over time, that is going to be yes. American products are going to be better sold elsewhere in the world. But the fact remains we are treated unfairly, and they have built structurally into their markets this unfairness. The subsidies to their steel companies, the subsidies to their car companies. That's why we don't do well. Did you ever think about why we don't sell cars in Europe, why we don't sell cars in Japan or Korea, why we could never really sell cars? It was very difficult for us to sell cars in China. I mean, it's not that hard to figure out. We can't sell corn, we can't sell beef, we can't sell cars because the rules are stacked against us. And I think it's interesting. It's time to change the rules and make the rules be stacked fairly with the United States of America. We need to stop supporting the rest of the world and start supporting American workers.
Let's take a for instance. Australia, for instance, hit with a 10% tariff. They don't accept beef imports from the United States. That goes back to when they thought mad cow was going to be imported with some of those things. If they were to start taking American beef imports, would that be something that would get them an exemption? And how quickly do you think that could happen?
I don't think the word exemption is going to be a factor. I don't think that's such a thing. I think what there's going to be is a world of fairness. Let's go try to figure out ways for the world to treat us more fairly and more properly. I don't think it's effective for the world to retaliate. I mean, those things are silly. We are the consumer of the world, right? We buy $20 trillion worth of goods, and we are basically the buyer of everybody else's in the world's items. So what is the point of them going higher? So that we go higher? I mean, come on, look, he gave a 50% discount. What he's saying is, look, we need to rebuild American manufacturing base. We can't allow the United States of America to not produce steel. We can't allow the United States of America not to produce pharmaceuticals. We can't have a war where we can't get antibiotics and we have to call another country to make a missile or to make a plane. I mean, these are obvious things. We need to have domestic production. We need to employ Americans. And I think that is the model that Donald Trump is seizing on. We need to employ Americans for the good of the United States of America. Factories are coming back. And here's the key. Factories now can use robotics. And so American workers can be much more efficient with robotics. You're going to see the greatest surge in training for what we call tradecraft, teaching people how to be robotics mechanics, engineers and electricians for high-tech factories, HVAC. You think about your air conditioning system. No. When you build one of these great factories like an Apple factory, they use air conditioning to cool it. That is really high-tech. It's a great paying job, and it requires a high school education and training, and our Americans are ready for it. And you're going to see the greatest resurgence of factory building and factory production in America. This is our time, and it is time for us to rebuild it, and that's what Donald Trump is out to do. He's changing the way people think about production in America. It's time to stop exporting and time to stop taking all our factories and letting the rest of the world have them. It's time to bring them home.
Along with that, there sometimes are some unintended consequences. And if it's the biggest reset of the economy, U.S. and global economy, since World War II, Howard, the stock market's one thing, and I can understand, we had 20% gains the last couple of years, and it's done well. But there's other markets in a world order to think about in terms of currency moves and bond yields. And it does matter because we're interconnected. So I'm going to paint you a story just quickly. The dollar has declined significantly since the president came in office. What if that became disorderly? And I mean, Europeans have already lost a lot of money in the stock market, and even more with the euro appreciating. What if they got to the point where interest rates suddenly had to spike, the dollar started to go into free fall, investment capital no longer came into the United States like it has been, because there's a fundamental shift in the world order in terms of currency. Is there a Trump put there? Maybe there's not a Trump put on the stock market, but what about on a collapsing dollar?
It just can't happen. I mean, if you think about it, the United States is a $29 trillion economy, and we are the consumer of $20 trillion of goods. Other countries are producers of goods, and we are the buyer of goods. So if you want to build your product, you're going to have to build it in America if you want to avoid these tariffs, or these countries have to fundamentally alter the way they do their business. Those two things going together are going to result in interest rates in the United States of America being much, much lower. High quality production jobs, much, much higher. Domestic production of huge amounts of factories. That's GDP, right?
Mr.
Remember,
Secretary?
when Donald Trump says we've got $5 trillion of factories coming to America, think of $5 trillion divided by his 4 years. That is huge GDP growth on factory building, which all of you are not yet thinking about. These factory commitments are going to create huge growth in America.
Mr. Secretary, that's the big question I wanted to ask you about factory commitments. And one of the things that I was speaking to a whole number of CEOs yesterday who need to actually make some decisions. And the question is, how soon do they make those decisions? And they talk about what they think of as this game of chicken, a almost political game, which is to say they don't know whether these tariffs, which are being announced today, are going to be the same in a month, 2 months, 6 months, and more importantly, in 4 or 5 years, when in fact the factories that they would have to invest in today would be up and running. What do you say to that CEO who says, you know what, I'm actually going to I'll take a flyer and I'll wait a year or two, see how this all plays out before I do anything, which also means that we're going to have a real freeze in terms of investment?
I think you're going to see, and we've been feeling it every day, that you're going to build in America. That this is a reordering of global trade, and it's really thoughtful. If you understood how rough these other countries are on American products, rough, and their tariffs are just like the tip of the iceberg. The classic, the rest of the iceberg below the water is so rough and so difficult, and they have subsidies and they have trade barriers, and you can't sell because if you lean 1 inch to the right or 1 inch to the left, oh, you're not allowed to sell. I mean, I tell the story, we made a deal in 2012 to take Korean cars. In exchange, they were going to take our produce and agriculture. And when McDonald's tried to bring in French fries, they actually said, we can't bring in the French fry. The American company can't bring in the French fries because we couldn't prove the origin of the potato. I am telling you, the rules of the world are so stacked against us that we are just the consumer of the world, and it's going to end. And once that ends, and once America wakes up to it, and now all of America is going to wake up to it, that everybody is going to build their factories here. Everybody's going to move their factories here. And America is going to become the producer of much, much more of what we consume. There will become a balance. Interest rates will be much, much lower. The United States of America will be much, much stronger. We are growing much too much like the rest of the world. Our growth rate should be double or triple them because we are the greatest economy and we are feeding the world. And Donald Trump would like to have America first. How about we feed America first? We start building these factories. You're going to start to see GDP, domestic production go up. We talk about buying foreign cars. That's consumption. That's not domestic production. We're going to start to see domestic production dramatically rise, and that's what Donald Trump is focused on.
Mr. Secretary, we've got a hard number. We've got, I think, a claims number coming at 8:30. You know, we got Friday and everything else, but we appreciate all the time you gave us this morning, and hope to see you explain all these things, make the case. I said, yeah, the Commerce Secretary, he'll probably be waffling a lot about all these things. That was sarcasm. You are not. You're very steadfast in making that case, and we appreciate it. Thank you.